This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, I'm Paige and I'm here with Adrienne. We're going to be doing an EPT session live, or it's actually going to be recorded. If anybody pops in live, that's fine, but otherwise it's going to be a recorded session. So if you don't know what EPT is, EPT stands for Emotional Polarity Technique, and it's a totally different approach in emotional healthcare, helping people to resolve the unresolved conflicts in their life using the science of forgiveness so that they can have more peace and joy in whatever their circumstances are. So that's what we're going to be doing today is an EPT session. And Dree has done EPT before, so she kind of knows what's going on, but for the sake of anybody watching, I'll kind of explain along the way. But if you've seen any of these videos, there's a lot of explaining anyway. So, all right, so today, what are we working on? We already talked about this, but what are we working on?
We're working.
Oh, wait. Also, is it okay if this is recorded?
Yes, it is okay. I give verbal
And
consent to record this video
yeah, and post it on the internet.
and post it on the internet. That's just fine.
Thank you. I forget that sometimes, but I figure if people are doing it live anyway, we're doing our thing. All right, so what are we gonna work on?
Today um, we're working on something that might be related. There are two specific areas that I'm thinking of. The first is I have a sports injury that happened in mid-March, and then the next week we all shut down because of coronavirus. Um, I have been doing physical therapy at home, and while it has resolved the vast majority of the pain, there's still some lingering soreness, stiffness, and at this point, I suspect it might be emotionally related.
Where is it?
It's my left hip.
Okay. And like how like on a scale of 1 to 10 about how much discomfort is there?
I would say now it's a 4. In the
Oh, okay.
beginning, it was an 8 out of 10,
Yeah,
and
still though,
it's been going down, and most of the time is functional, no sharp pain, but it is sore the vast majority of the time. There's a soreness and a stiffness. And I think it might be related to the issue that I spoke about earlier with you, which
yeah.
is I feel sad because the coronavirus is magnifying a lot of societal issues that we experience where humans are not properly caring for other humans or seeing them as
Human.
equals, as human, and it makes me very sad. It's heartbreaking. I am not sad all the time. I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, when I do think about it, it's probably a 5,
Okay.
maybe
Like,
a 6
yeah,
out of
okay.
10. If there's something that I read that has to do with persecuting someone, intentionally choosing not to care for the community, um,
Okay.
government not taking initiative to take care of its citizens, etc.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right, so we'll work on the pain. Just as a side note, before I forget, have you tried sodium for your hip pain? As a
Soaking or eating?
sodium, so eating sodium or soaking, I guess it could work too. But
We do have Epsom salt. I
yeah,
have done some Epsom salt work. I have not taken sodium capsules, but I do love salt.
well, I've had left side pain, and sometimes it's a sodium deficiency. So if you do take some, or like you could, if you have like some sort of very salty broth before bed, and see if it changes in the morning. This is a suggestion. If
Okay.
it's left side and it's kind of lingering pain, it's an easy attempt, to see if it does anything. Uh, but like sometimes it can just be, I know you're not like a bullion cube or something, but but you can also take a supplement. But just to see, just rack it up and see how it goes. Left side pain. I've had it help any pain I have on my left side before, but it's like, you know, it's a quick fix if it's that. So all right, so okay, we'll work on that. So to start, I've got magnets. You've seen these before, but you don't have any, I don't think.
Not with me at this time.
Okay. And so we're going to do a rapport building exercise. That's just breathing together. If you were here, then I would put my hands on you, but you are not. So you will put your hands on yourself. So in EPT, it's about, I would say about 80% the same via video chat. It's just less or no contact when you're in video. So, and when you're in my office, it's more contact. So, all right. So hands on your head like this. We're going to breathe together 3 times. So breathe, and what you're going to do is you're going to squeeze your head and inhale, and then release on the exhale. So
Okay.
breathe in. Breathe in. Breathe in. Breathe in. And then we're going to do 3 more breaths, but what we're going to do is put a finger in the middle of like the bridge of your nose and a finger on the back of your head, like where your occipital is. And then kind of the same thing, like breathe and pull up and then release, exhale on the release. So
Okay.
breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe in. Okay, so, all right, so just think about the injury. And let's see. And think about the just sadness with the world. Yeah. Okay, well, let's go. We're gonna go towards the injury, I think, and then we'll incorporate the sadness with the world. All right.
Okay.
So what I'm doing right now is, for anyone who's viewing, I'm doing muscle testing with my hand. If it was in person, I would be using Dree's arm. And she has children in the background, so she's like talking to them at the same time as I am talking. All right, so I'm doing muscle testing to test the distress and the elation in the stage of healing. Okay, so distress for this is about a 6, so not super high, whether they're together. And then elation is a 0, so you're not addicted to the pain. That's good. Stage of healing is a 2, which is anger. So we follow these 7 stages of healing on this little card. It's denial, anger, bargain, depression, acceptance, and then light emerging and creation of new life. Because basically, you're always going through these stages in some way, shape, or form. You can go through them quickly. You can get stuck in certain places. You can be in depression in one place, and you can be in light emerging in another place in your life, like your relationships and your family or your profession, whatever that is. So for this issue that we're working on, it's a 2. Well, I'm like, what happened? You disappeared. But I can hear you. So anger is where we're at. Showing up is weak. So I also test blocks to healing, which is show up, pay attention, tell the truth, and let go. So usually this is just to help me make some statements and how to shape the statements a little bit once we get there. But if you're not able to show up, pay attention, tell the truth, or let go, then it's a lot harder to heal anything.
Yes.
All right, so how many issues? 1 issue. All right, so who? Self. All right. Self. Organ, lung. Grief.
Grief.
My grief. Grief. I feel my grief with myself because you can fill in the blank. Oh, and again, for the audience, I use this chart to find the emotions. It's the emotion chart, and it's the same as something they might use in acupuncture. Basically, different organs hold different emotions, both the pleasant and the unpleasant. So I'm looking for where that is in your body. So grief, with myself. Yep. Yep. With myself. So why would you feel grief with yourself?
In the beginning, I was sad because I recently had my daughter, and I was actively doing something I have done in the past with my other two children to rebuild strength and energy and lose pregnancy weight.
Mm-hmm.
And now, when I got injured, I can't do that anymore. But the other part of that component is not only can I not work out when I'm injured the way I want to, what I did in the past for the other two, according to the physical therapist, is not something that I can do going forward now.
Because of the
Basically,
injury?
because I'm older. That's what I was told, which is basically like what you did before that gave you results and made you feel healthy and gave you energy is because you're older now or have aged is more likely to cause recurring injury or damage to your body because I don't know, because you are older. And I don't grieve being older, but I do grieve the fact that I want things to be streamlined, simplistic, comfortable, familiar, and they're not. So now
Yeah.
I have had to find a new way to do something that in the past was
It's fine.
a no-brainer. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so it's like my grief with myself. Yeah, because I'm like, it's not testing like because I can't do something I could do
No,
before. It's
no,
not because I'm old. Like,
no, I don't feel sad that I'm old. It feels like I feel sad because
it's like a
everything
change.
is
Yeah.
everything is different. It's
Yeah.
different. It's not the same. I like the same. I like routine,
Yeah,
which
and you're
is
like, when is
very
this gonna happen
human.
again? You're like, how can the only way to find out what this is how can I plan ahead for this like in the future?
Yes. Yes.
Um, yeah, so it's yeah, I mean, it is more like it does test more my group with myself because I have to change what I did before.
Yes.
Like you said, different. I think the word different works. The change, um, yeah, which is very COVID related as well.
Yes, it is.
uh, I have to change what I did before. So yeah, and it's like not. I'm like it's again. It's not even like It's not even showing up like it's a loss.
No.
It's like the adjustment itself causes grief.
I'm I'm a very rigid person. Um, I'm a very rigid person. I like routine. I I like knowing what to do and preparing in advance.
Hmm.
So this is frustrating.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and again, like you're like, how many more times is it gonna happen? Like it's gonna keep happening, and like is the only way that I know about it is by getting injured. Is that Like,
No.
like that would be frustrating. The only way to deal with this change is to get hurt or to feel upset or to um, or something bad has to happen before the adjustment occurs. Um,
That's a good way of putting it.
um, and so what I'm thinking is that there's like you being able to um, like I don't know if it's plan is the right word. Maybe not even anticipate, but just feel okay. I guess yeah, it's just feeling okay knowing that an injury might happen or might not, or something terrible might happen or might not, but the change is always going to happen. Um,
Hmm.
okay, okay. Um, and just to feel well, the positive side of the grief is joy, happiness, and relaxed. Being wherever I am. Um, yeah, it's interesting because it just doesn't feel like you're grieving some past thing. It's just like it's just annoyed with the change. Like you're fine with it. It's like you're fine with it with like getting rid of the old and the new coming in. It's just that middle part that's terrible. I,
It's so terrible.
which is like again very COVID-y. Like
Yes, it is.
we're in like this like endless apparent limbo. Okay. All right. So for apparently who's watching right now, we're doing a session with Adrienne and we're working on an injury, but also her sadness with COVID and the world as, as it is. All right. So, all right. So grouping myself. Yeah. And I want to say like being okay, not anticipating. That's kind of um, it's like not anticipating torture. Like, that's like there's this like torturous sort of aspect. And
It's
maybe it's all
self-inflicted.
but it's also like you have a lot of people to manage in your family. Um, so you're like, if this was just me, a million times easier. And again, we're talking like a lot of your, like you said, your COVID sadness, a lot of it has to do with other people. So I'm also thinking there's a little bit of this, like the anticipated torture. You're like, I can handle it for myself, but these other people are just dragging me down, meaning, other people, but also all these tiny children that you have. All right. So, okay. So oh well. Put a hand on your lung and a hand on your forehead. So again, with magnets, we're just disrupting what's happening in Dree's body, and we're adding a certain balance so that everything is in healing order. All right. So we're gonna breathe 3 times. So breathe in. Out. And it's the grief with myself because I have to change what I did before. All right. Breathe in. Breathe in. Um, okay. Okay. Uh, okay, so let's see. Is there an original event? 5 years old. My grief. Um, okay. So it's my grief with dad when you were 5. I mean, I don't know when you started going to school. Was it 5?
Kindergarten, yeah.
Yeah, so you didn't go to like pre-K or like have like you didn't have a pre-K or like a what do you, daycare or anything.
I don't think so. My mom
Okay.
stayed home with me, but when I was in kindergarten, kindergarten was all day kindergarten, and then I had to do after school care at the school
Oh, whoa.
because my mom started teaching. My mom taught at the school that I attended as private school. So she was there, um, and my brother was one, so he was in the care of someone nearby, like an in-home,
Mm-hmm.
and my mom was teaching, and I think she was doing like after school care.
So that would have been a big adjustment. You were probably just hanging out with her the whole time, and then you have your brother, and then you also go to school.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And so it's my grief with dad at 5. Was anything happening with your dad? I'm just kind of thinking, uh, like it wasn't as you didn't see him as much.
Yeah, he worked a lot, and he worked farther away from our house, and so it was not unusual for him to have his alarm go off at 5:15, and then he would be gone before 6 a.m. And because he was commuting, he would come home. I want to say it was after we were eating, because we were little and we were eating like at 5. My dad wouldn't
Hmm.
come home till like 6,
Okay.
sometimes 6:30.
Yeah, I mean, just testing like everything is different. My grief with
Hmm.
dad because everything is different. Like I'm thinking there's a multitude of things. It could be I don't know if you're in your 5-year-old brain, you're thinking, is my brother with my dad? What's going on? Like I don't know. Um, I mean, your kids too, where they're like you're like you. I've been on the phone with you, and it's like they'll be like, "Where's your dad? Where's dad?" And you're like, "You know where he is." Like, you know, like you could be asking the same thing, like, "Where's dad? Why isn't he hanging out with us? Is he with my brother? That's not fair." Like I don't know. Let's see.
Oh, boo boo.
Uh-huh. That was by May. Okay, my grief with dad at 5 years old because everything is different. Um, yeah, that works. And that's the only emotion. All right. Yep. I'm like, and yeah, we'll tie. I wonder what would your mom's like? Because that's a long day. Like, what
It was a long
would
day.
what else do you remember at 5?
My brother would have been 18 months.
Uh-huh.
I don't think I don't think he had any missed milestones at 18 months. I don't think there was questions about his autism until he was closer to 2.
Mm.
So I don't think that was on the radar at that
Okay.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I was just thinking, like, for you, do you remember anything at 5? Like, did you get hurt or?
They used to make us take nap in kindergarten
Yes,
because
that's what they
kindergarten was all day, and
you had to
we
nap.
had nap mats, and our kindergarten teacher would put the nap mats out and close. There were like kind of opaque drapes, so it would let some sunlight in, but the room was
Hmm.
darker, and she would turn off half of the lights in the room, so it wasn't dark. And I remember laying on my nap mat a couple times and thinking, this is dumb. I don't need a
I'm
nap. And I
I'm
had to be
assuming,
quiet. You have to be quiet, you have to be still, you have to stay on your mat unless you have to go to the bathroom. And I definitely remember thinking, why do I have to be still? I'm not tired. This is dumb.
I'm assuming you probably weren't taking naps at home before then either.
No,
Were you at all riding a bike or anything by that time?
no bikes, not at
Did you
5.
have any like I mean I guess you had after school kind of care, but like what other I'm like trying to think of like 5-year-old extracurriculars. Probably not, huh?
I don't think I did anything until T-ball, and that was
Yeah.
6. I was
Okay.
6 when I played T-ball.
All right. So no like no like falling and severely injuring yourself in kindergarten. Oh
Not that I
really?
can
Oh man.
recall.
I can remember. That's okay.
That
That's
was
fine.
later. That
Yeah.
was later when I started falling off things.
Okay. I'm like, oh, we have more people in our video. All right. Okay. So I think we're good. We're gonna do the grief. I tested also for trauma, and it was phase 2 trauma. Were you excited to go to kindergarten?
I liked kindergarten other than the
Okay.
mandatory nap. We had a goldfish. It was really sweet.
Okay. Okay.
For liking the
Um,
goldfish.
um, all right. I agree with that. Okay. It's phase 2 trauma, but it could just be an emotional trauma again, as far as like just a large life transition in your 5-year-old body. And all that means is while we do statements, um, you can tap the top of your head. Uh, so phase 1 and phase 2 trauma come from a book called The Body Keeps the Score from Bessel van der Kolk, and his phase 1 is essentially fight or flight, and phase 2 is freeze. So you just went on your 5-year-old autopilot, whatever that looks like for you, um, when you had to make this change, which is probably like it's how a lot of people operate. You just got to do what you got to do. Um,
Hmm.
there's no um, well, like you kind of go into survival mode. Um, and maybe dissociate a little bit just because that's what you have to do to get through. So, ooh, hello. Excuse me.
Bye.
All right.
I'm in a meeting.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna do some statements, and so you can either do this for a little bit. You can also rub your fear release points, which are just below the collarbone. And yeah, so I might tap a little while we do this. And again, I also have my little qigong machine, which is great for me. And
That's
then
nice.
here, I'll put it on my left hip for you.
Oh, thank you.
And then all right, let's do this. So
All right.
I also have for anyone watching, I follow a card, but I also go off script a little bit. So, um, all right. So, oh yeah, tapping. All right. So I forgive myself for believing
I forgive myself for believing.
I have to hold on to grief
I have to hold on to grief
with my dad when I'm 5
with my dad when I'm 5
because everything's different.
because everything's different.
And breathe. I forgive myself for believing
I forgive myself for believing
that this grief and pain that I feel
that this grief and pain that I feel
and torture I feel
and torture, that's a nice word,
torture I feel every time something's different
every time something is different
will always be this way.
will always be this way.
And breathe. I forgive myself for believing,
I forgive myself for believing.
or I forgive my 5-year-old self for believing
I forgive my 5-year-old self for believing
that if only her dad could be there,
that if only her dad could be there,
uh, then she could handle this change better.
And she could handle this change better.
Yeah, breathe. I forgive myself for believing.
I forgive myself for believing.
I can't handle the change
I can't handle the change
without my dad being there
without my dad being there. Yeah.
and helping
And helping.
and having him to help. Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, okay, breathe.
Yeah, and having to help. I forgive myself for believing I need an adult to
Yeah.
guide me through all change in life
Yeah.
to feel
Yep.
safe and secure.
Yeah. That's yeah.
My brain's like, where are the adults? Where are the adults? I need a grown up. I need a grown up.
Yeah, I forgive myself for believing.
I forgive myself for believing.
If my dad isn't there,
If my dad isn't there,
then I'll fail.
Then I'll fail.
Or something terrible will happen.
Or something terrible will happen.
When the change happens.
When the change happens.
Yeah, I'm great. I forgive my 5-year-old self for believing.
I forgive my 5-year-old self for believing.
She's to hold on to grief.
She has to hold on to grief.
As long as her dad isn't there.
As long as her dad isn't there.
To help her through the change.
To help her through the change.
Yeah, breathe. Forgive myself for believing.
I forgive myself for believing.
I can't show up.
I can't show up.
And be the adult.
And be the adult.
Without feeling grief.
Without feeling sad.
Yeah, about my dad who wasn't there.
About my dad who wasn't there.
When I was 5.
When I was 5.
And our whole life changed.
And our whole life changed.
Well, for you, it felt like that.
My whole life changed.
Yeah,
my whole life changed.
Yeah. You're like, I hadn't been taking naps for years. Wow. Yeah. What does he want to come say statements?
They just keep coming in. Hello, Spider-Man. I'm in a meeting.
They need consulting.
They need attention.
Yep. Okay, so I forgive myself for believing.
I forgive myself for believing.
I can't show up as the adult.
I can't show up as the adult.
Without feeling grief.
Without feeling grief.
About
the adult.
Yeah.
That I am the adult.
There you go.
That I'm in charge.
I'm breathing. I forgive myself for believing.
I forgive myself for believing.
If I show up as the adult.
If I show up as the adult.
It won't matter.
It won't matter.
My dad still won't be there.
My dad still won't be there.
Yeah. Let's see here. I forgive myself.
I forgive myself for believing.
I still need my dad.
I still need my dad.
Before I can feel joy and happiness.
Before I can feel joy or happiness.
And relaxed.
And relaxed.
When everything is different.
When everything is different.
I forgive my dad.
I forgive my dad.
For not being there, or for being there differently when I was 5.
For being there differently when I was 5.
Yeah, I'm breathing. I forgive myself for believing.
I forgive myself for believing.
I have to hold on to grief with my dad.
I have to hold on to grief with my dad.
Because he's showing up differently than before.
Because he's showing up differently than before.
Yeah, breathe. I forgive my dad.
I forgive my dad.
For hurting my feelings.
For hurting my feelings.
When he didn't show up as the adult.
When he didn't show up as the adult.
Can't breathe. I forgive myself
I forgive myself.
when I don't want to show up as the
Yes,
adult.
when I don't want to show up as the adult.
Yeah, breathe. And yeah, and it reminds me of this grief from when I was 5
And it reminds me of this grief from when I was 5
with my dad,
with my dad,
who also didn't want to.
who also did not want to show up.
Yeah, I'm breathing. I forgive myself for believing
I forgive myself for believing.
this grief can't change
This grief can't change.
until some other adult shows up.
Yes, until some other adult shows up.
And does the adulting.
And does the adulting.
Yeah, I'm great. I forgive myself for believing
I forgive myself for believing.
I can't show up with joy or happy or relaxed
I can't show up and feel joy, happy, or relaxed
unless another adult is there.
unless another adult is there.
Dealing with this the same way I am. Ooh, this is fun.
Dealing with this the same way I am.
I love this. So much action. More action than we normally get. Luckily, nobody else is watching right now, so they probably like it. Breathe in.
Your mom would crack up.
Okay. I forgive myself for believing
I forgive myself for believing.
my dad has to change
My dad has to change
before I can let go of this grief.
before I can let go of this grief.
That everything's different.
That everything is different.
I forgive myself for believing
I forgive myself for believing.
I can't feel joy, happy, or relaxed
I can't feel joy, happy, or relaxed
if my dad also doesn't feel that way.
if my dad doesn't also feel that way.
Yeah, breathe. I forgive my dad
I forgive my dad
for not showing up,
for not showing up,
feeling joy, happy, and relaxed
feeling joy, happy, and relaxed
with all the change.
with all the change.
I give my dad permission to forgive me
I give my dad permission to forgive me
when I blame him
when I blame him
for the grief I feel
for the grief I feel
when everything is different.
when everything is different.
And I have to change the way we operated before.
And I have to change the way I operated before.
Yeah. They clearly love you very much. Hi. I give my dad permission to forgive me
I give my dad permission to forgive me
when for blaming him for the grief
for blaming him for the grief
when I don't want to show up
when I don't want to show up
to
I like to parent my kids.
yes, yeah, yeah, I mean, I guess in some sense, like I'm sure like your dad's grief might more be that he's not there, not necessarily that can't.
Yeah.
You know,
Mom,
like
you shouldn't be sitting
there wasn't another
Because,
option, you know,
if
No.
for him. Yeah.
If I hold down on this thing, then it's gonna make you fall backwards and make you gonna become safe.
Yeah, though. Yep.
You want to tap on my head? You do this?
Yeah, do the tapping for her.
Take that.
Yeah, go ahead. Do it to your mom.
You tap my head. You tap.
Do it.
You tap me.
Her. She's like, no, it's more fun if you tap me. There you go. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
You do it. Very good, Michael.
Perfect. Thank you. I give my dad permission to forgive me
I give my dad permission to forgive me
when I don't want to show up
when I don't want to show up.
To the grief I feel
The grief I feel
when things are different
when things are different.
and I have to parent different.
And I have to parent differently.
Yeah, great. I give I give others permission to forgive me
I give others permission to forgive me
when I blame them
when I blame them
for not wanting to show up
for not wanting to show up
and be the adults
and be the adults
when things change
when things change
or have to be adjusted.
or has to be adjusted.
Yeah, breathe. I give others permission to forgive me
I give others permission to forgive me
for blaming them
for blaming them
for the torture I feel.
for the torture I feel.
Um,
Torture is a great word. It really is.
for the torture I feel when I have to change what I did before.
When I have to change what I did before.
Breathe. Without, or I love and accept myself,
I love and accept myself,
even when I'm afraid.
even when I'm afraid.
I have to feel this grief every time.
I have to feel this grief every time.
And breathe. I love and accept myself,
I love and accept myself,
even when I'm afraid.
even when I'm afraid.
If I show up,
If I show up,
I'll be angry.
I'll be angry.
And breathe. I love and accept myself,
I love and accept myself,
even when I'm afraid.
even when I'm afraid.
Nothing, it will never go back to normal.
Yeah, it'll never go back to normal and I will be stuck.
Yeah, and breathe.
Yeah, I'll be stuck.
I I I forgive myself for believing.
I forgive myself for believing.
I can't feel joy, happiness, or relaxed
I can't feel joy, happiness, or relax.
until everything is back to normal.
Yeah, until everything is back to normal.
Yeah, right. Even knowing it never will.
Yeah,
like you know up
yeah.
here it's never gonna be back to the
No, and the funny thing is, there is no normal in our house,
Mm-mm.
in our family. So it's a weird, fantastical pathway that's been created.
Well, and that's what I'm thinking, like maybe that's the 5-year-old self is, and I don't know, maybe your parents or somebody maybe told you, like, don't worry, you'll like maybe not you'll get used to it, but they might say something like, this is just normal, and you're like, this is
Mm-hmm.
not normal. Like normal was when I was hanging out at home with my mom and I saw my dad a little bit more and like that was normal.
Mm-hmm.
And and you may have like misinterpreted it to a so how about I forgive my 5-year-old self
I forgive my 5-year-old self
for 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 holding on to grief,
for holding on to grief.
anticipating everything will go back to normal.
Oh, anticipating that everything will go back to normal.
And and her family relationships will be back the way they were before
Yes,
kindergarten.
and our family relationships will be back the way they were before, and her parents will be more present.
Yeah, and breathe. I forgive myself for believing
I forgive myself for believing
I can't feel joy, happiness, and relax
I can't feel joy, happiness, and relax
um, unless my parents are more present,
unless my parents are more present,
like it was before kindergarten.
like it was before kindergarten.
Yeah, right. I forgive myself for believing everything is torture when it's
Everything is
different.
torture when it's different. That's a really good statement.
I forgive myself,
I
or
forgive myself.
how about I give myself permission.
I give myself permission.
I give my 5-year-old self permission
I give my 5-year-old self permission
to let go of her loyalty to her dad,
to let go of her loyalty to her dad,
wanting things to just be easier.
Wanting things to just be easier.
Not where we all had to go to work in different places.
Not where we all had to go to work and school in different places.
Right. Oh, that was good.
Can't play video game,
How about without this grief, I am free
Without this grief, I am free.
to feel joy, happiness, and relaxed.
To feel joy, happiness, and relaxed.
Um, um, when things are different.
When things are different.
Yeah, great. Without this pattern, I am free
Without this pattern, I am free.
to anticipate
To anticipate change.
And feel relaxed.
And feel relaxed.
Yeah, I'm free. Without this pattern, I am free
Without this pattern, I am free.
to be there for my 5-year-old self
To be there for my 5-year-old self
when everything was different.
when everything was different.
Let's see here. Without this pattern, I am free
Without this pattern, I am free
to show up
to show up
when things are different
when things are different
and feel joy, happiness, and relaxed.
and feel joy, happiness, and relaxed.
Yeah, I'm free. Without this pattern, I am free
Without this pattern, I am free
to feel joy, happiness, and relaxed,
to feel joy, happiness, and relaxed.
even when other people don't show up.
Yep, even when other people don't show up.
When things are different or when things change.
When things are different or when things change.
Yeah, I'm free. Without this pattern, I am free
Without this pattern, I am free
to feel joy, happiness, and relaxed,
to feel joy, happiness, and relaxed.
making what adjustments I can.
Making adjustments that I can.
Um, that makes it easier for me and my kids and Paul.
Makes it easier for me and my children and Paul.
Yeah, great. Without this pattern, I am free
Without this pattern, I am free
to change what I did before,
to change what I did before,
even without prompting.
even without prompting,
Yeah, or without something happening.
or without something happening.
Yeah, great. Well, I guess without this pattern, I am free
Without this pattern, I am free
to feel joy, happiness, and relaxed.
to feel joy, happiness, and relaxed.
Being a flexible adult.
Being a flexible adult.
Without this pattern, I am free
Without this pattern, I am free
to love myself more,
to love myself more,
even when the change feels torturous.
even when the change feels torturous.
Yeah, great. Without this pattern, I am free
Without this pattern, I am free
to love myself more,
to love myself more,
being the adult
being the adult,
and
Can't get my web.
yeah, being okay with change.
and being okay with change.
Without this pattern, I am free
Without this pattern, I am free
to feel joy, happiness, and relax,
to feel joy, happiness, and relax,
and love others more,
and love others more,
even when they don't.
even when they don't.
or don't, or when they don't show up, or don't.
Or when they don't show up, or they don't do it the way I would do it.
Well, and that's like something you have to deal with every day on a tiny scale with your tiny children.
Yes. Yes.
It's amazing. All right, let's see here. Okay, let's see where we're at. All right, so so the numbers, so I always like the numbers before. The stress went down to a 3. I mean, I don't know how you're feeling, but those are some nice statements.
I feel pretty good. I just sent a child to go get a charge cord, so we'll see how that goes.
Oh, well, you know, they needed a job to do.
They do need a job.
Show up got strong. The stress went from a 6 to a 3. And there might be, I think it's like, it's sort of like instead, I mean, it's terrible, like the whole magnification of these societal issues, but at the same time, it's like there's only so much you can do in the tiny microcosm of your home.
Yes.
You know? And like those issues can play out the same way, where maybe you feel like you're not being cared for, or you're not getting, or you have to be the one who meets everyone's needs, or your ideas aren't always
Yes, that's a very good way of putting it. And then there's a lot of distress that comes from that.
And so letting go of this sort of 5-year-old grief that things will never be the same. I mean, it's kind of heavy. It's kind of heavy, but how about without this pattern, I am free.
Without this pattern, I am free.
To open up.
To open up.
To change and experience.
To change and experience.
And relationships.
And relationships.
That are 10,000 times better.
10,000 times better.
Than anything I had before.
Than anything I had before.
Because I'm not 5 anymore.
Because I'm not 5 anymore.
And I know that it's possible.
And I know that it's possible.
To experience change for the better.
To experience change for the better.
For myself and my family and the world.
For myself, my family, and the world.
Yeah, great. But without this pattern, I am free.
Without this pattern, I am free.
To let's say to trust God.
To trust God.
Through the change.
Through the change.
And what adulting I can handle and can't handle.
In what adulting I can handle and the adulting that I cannot handle.
Yeah, great. All right. Okay. Yeah, so it's like that's, and I guess like just kind of breathing into that grief that everything is different, but also knowing it can be, you can still feel relaxed in the change, and it's always in flux, you know, so yeah, hopefully it will feel less like torture. But thanks for doing this with me. I'm going to stop the recording unless there's anything you'd like to add. You probably are tired, or you're like, I don't know, what are you doing next?
Whatever is necessary and needed. Although I am sleepy, I could go take a nap. Yeah. But I think I could take a nap most days.
That's, yeah, I believe you. All right, let me go ahead and stop the recording. Stop recording.